And I don't know. We ought to be live at this point. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I got Rekrap, Despot of Antrim, and Echo Chamberlain here with me. We'll be talking about some movies and stuff. But before we do that, I'll have these guys introduce themselves. Go ahead, one of you fellas.
Take it away, someone.
Don't make me call him like I'm a teacher.
Since I'm in the future, I guess I should go first.
Go ahead, Echo.
Just your everyday happy YouTuber, aghast and perturbed by the state of modern Hollywood, which is an endless well of stupidity and an endless source of inspiration for videos. Thanks for having me on, Greg.
Thanks for being on.
Yeah, I'm Despot of Antrim. Do analysis of basically shit media. That's my job. So I do TV shows, some advertisements, corporate propaganda, really, and movies. And yeah, like Echo says, there's just no end to it. Sometimes I do think, wow, in the future, what if all the media is great and there's no more crap media to talk about? But no, that's just never going to happen. So yeah.
No.
And I'm Rekrap, which is just my name backwards because that's as creative as I get. I just run a small YouTube channel. Just started it not too long ago, so super happy to be on with you guys. Thanks, Greg, for making the mistake of having me on, but I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I saw a couple of Rekrap's videos. He does a lot of stuff about like mid-range movies, especially. I've seen him talk about that a lot, like how we have a lot of indie stuff, we have a lot of blockbusters, but we're missing kind of the mid-range stuff. And we'll talk about one of those later in the show. But I am Greg. I'll be your MC for the evening. And I'm actually really excited. I wanted to make a video about me. Like, I want to do like a professional intro for us, but all I could think of was the most stereotypical crap. Like, I was going to do the South Park Terrence and Howard thing for Rekrap. I was going to find something, I don't know, the most stereotypical Irish crap for Despot. I was going to find I don't know. I couldn't put it together. One of these days, I'll get us some really cool professional intro to start us off with. But yeah. In the meantime,
just as a side note, my username is also my name backwards. So my actual name is Niall.
So to get us started off with, recently here, the Ahsoka show finished up, and I've got some viewer numbers here for that last episode. They're clocking that in at like 850,000 households. And, you know, it's kind of interesting, the data that got put out, because a lot of people, they'll follow Nielsen numbers and they'll just divide the minutes that they provide by the minutes of the shows. Or people will follow Samba TV, and they'll usually give something. But Ahsoka was the first time that Disney came out and revealed their own numbers. And I don't know if you guys saw that, like, between Nielsen and Samba, the first 5 days of Ahsoka, they said, it's roughly 1.2, 1.4 million households watch this. And Disney came out and they were like, no, it was 14 million people, you guys, that tuned in for this show. And if they are to be believed, then it's a really huge drop off, because the final episode of the season clocked in at just under 1 million. Did any of you guys catch any of those episodes, any of the season at all?
I watched all of it because, well, to talk about during live streams, I didn't watch a single episode voluntarily. So, I mean, for example, when I was watching One Piece, which is really the only show I would go out of my way to recommend this year, I watched it. I just watched it for sheer enjoyment, and I really wanted to watch it. But with Ahsoka, all the episodes I just watched to talk about in live stream, I ended up seeing the whole season. And I will say this, rather than just get absolutely laid into it from the go, I'll say it's not as bad as Obi-Wan. It's definitely not as bad as Mando Season 3 or Boba Fett. I think it's still crap. It's a pretty damn bad show, but it's not as bad as we've seen from Star Wars, and that's a very, very, very low bar. But I would rate it as above Obi-Wan and obviously below Andor, but probably below the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian. So I mean, if it's worse than Mando Season 2, it's got to be pretty bad.
Yeah. Echo, Parker, did you guys see that by chance?
I watched the first episode, and had I known I was gonna go on a live stream to chat about it, I would have suffered through the rest. So sorry to hear about that, Despo. But yeah, after all the recent Star Wars stuff, I gave it a fair shot on episode 1 and saw that we were in for more of the same. And to hear you say it's around Obi-Wan Kenobi level or a slightly higher, seems like the right decision was made.
Yeah, you would have wasted a lot of your time watching that one.
Fair enough.
I got up to episode 7 and then I tapped out. I couldn't do it anymore. Getting through.
Your review of that was great. I loved it. Guys, watch Echo's review of Ahsoka. It's perfect.
And like on another stream, people have like tried to get me to do an actual stream where I'm just watching it in real time to see the tear slowly trickling down my face. But I would liken the dynamic of watching the series to someone who's being force fed, where they binge a huge amount of gross food and they projectile vomit, and then they're force fed more, and then it's a cycle like that. It's what it felt like aesthetically in the terms of consuming the content. So I had a really, really bad time, and just made me sad. The huge scope and potential of the Star Wars universe turned into this derivative member berry nonsense, where it's almost literally as if they'd squished out and juiced some member berries and smeared it on Thrawn's face. Like that's the level we're at now. God.
I haven't made it past episode 4. I went on vacation in the middle of last month, and I was doing reviews, and it occurred to me that I was all like Despot, where I was watching. I haven't finished Wheel of Time, I haven't finished Ahsoka, but I absolutely finished One Piece, and I think that says all of it, because if it weren't for me trying to make videos about Ahsoka, I wouldn't have watched any more than Parker did. Like, the first 2 episodes I thought were okay. I said so in my review. I was like, yeah, they're not bad. Like, it was all right. I'll keep going for review purposes. But if it were me and I had caught those first 2 and I wasn't like a diehard like Star Wars guy, I can see how everybody would watch the first 2 episodes and go, all right, well, that was good. I'm not gonna continue. And I've seen reviews of like the finale, and correct me if I'm wrong, Despot, but the finale, it seems like it's like Disney Plus is doing. Every show just leads into the next show. Like, my understanding is that the last episode didn't even really have any kind of catharsis or real ending. It was just like, stay tuned for next season. Is that how it felt?
It was basically a cliffhanger, and it didn't really tie off any character arcs because there aren't any character arcs. So, for example, Ahsoka starts off as a boring, stoic, basically I described her as a woman playing a man, which I maintain is true. Kind of warrior monk type thing. Yeah. She starts off like that, only not as interesting as a warrior monk because she doesn't have a philosophy that is identifiable in the show. She just says things that are platitudinal and vaguely Jedi sounding sometimes, at least to whatever 13-year-old they brought in to write the script. And that's basically it, and she doesn't change at all. And then her annoying sidekick Sabine, who is her little Padawan learner, Sabine gets better at using the Force because of course she does, because she starts out a strong, powerful, brave, rebellious woman, and she ends a slightly stronger, powerful, brave, rebellious woman. Then you've got the hot blonde chick who is the bad guy's sidekick, and she doesn't really, she's still just kind of hot blonde bad guy. And then Ray Stevenson's character, he's still alive, so and hasn't changed at all. But obviously, he's not going to be in the next season because the actor died. So who knows what they'll do with that. I don't even know if there would be another season because the numbers were so poor, and it didn't. It did generate quite a bit of buzz on social media from Disney stands, but the last episode, didn't really do much in terms of tying things off. It wants another season. It's very clear from the last episode that what they were going for was just a big cliffhanger, and they have kind of 2 big cliffhangers where you say, oh, what's going to happen now? Like, if you cared, like I didn't say that because I don't care, but if you were into the show, there are 2 things in particular that you might want to know what happens next. But there are no major tie-offs. The entire season did not contain any character arcs that I could identify. And the last episode in particular is noticeably stupid. So I'll give you an example of its stupidity. One thing I noticed throughout the entire show was contrived scene logistics. So contrived scene logistics is where basically everything happens only when the script wants it to happen. So you've got a scene where Ahsoka and Sabine are on a ship, and the ship is being repaired by the robot, and then the guy Ezra is inside building a lightsaber. So Sabine goes outside the ship and she talks to Ahsoka for a while, and they have a boring chat. I honestly have no idea what they talked about, despite watching the show. And then only right after they finish the conversation, like the second they're finished, Ezra comes outside and says, "Look, guys, I finished my lightsaber." And right the second after that, some TIE fighters come along and attack them. And it's just everything is happening only when the writer wants it to happen. Once he's finished a dramatic beat, then the next dramatic beat can start. And you get the sense that in universe, there's no natural flow of time. Events only occur when the script requires them to occur. And it's like the TIE fighters are just paused in midair, waiting for the conversation to finish, and then they fly in. It's pathetic. And there's a lot of that. There is a lot of those kind of contrived scene logistics, those very conveniently placed plot beats. It's very childish, and once you see it, you can't unsee it, kind of thing. Just if you watch out for those, if there's anyone here who's curious as to why Ahsoka's so bad, or someone's watching it and they're not quite sure, what's really the problem here? Contrived scene logistics is a big one. That's part of the really bad amateur writing. Dave Filoni is a bad writer.
It's so unfortunate because those were all the same issues I had with Obi-Wan. It's seemingly no flow of time, the way things just happen. Like you say, the TIE fighters paused in air. And it's also unfortunate because I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious for Ahsoka, because I didn't mind her debut in Mandalorian. Like, she was a standout for me. But also, like, lots of the imagery and aesthetic, I thought actually it was shot well, but I would agree with Filoni's writing, and it's apparently gone that way. But lots of the imagery and stuff I saw, I don't know if it stayed that way in the show, but it looked like it was well shot.
Yeah, the direction from a visual perspective, it's very well directed, I would say. I'm not sure who directed what episodes, but the direction visually, it's very competent, well composed frames. The cinematography is pretty good. It's well lit in contrast to Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan was just a black pit of hideousness, and very, very poorly directed. But yeah, it was quite decently directed. It wasn't bad to look at. Sometimes, though, the unfortunate thing is that's to its detriment, because the lightsaber fights, especially when Ahsoka's involved, her lightsaber fights suck, because Rosario Dawson, the woman playing her, just doesn't have the athleticism. She's so slow. Watching her, did anybody notice that? Did anyone notice just how, like Echo? Did you notice how? I described it as sluggish, just how sluggish her lightsaber fighting was, and how unconvincing.
Yeah, it reminded me of Big Trouble in Little China, when like one of those mystical dudes descends down and he's like doing his sword demonstration display thing, and it's kind of in slow motion. That's kind of what it reminded me of in terms of the speed. Yeah,
it was so slow, and they couldn't speed it up. They couldn't use trickery, because then everything around her would have speeded up, and so they had to go with it. Right. And it just looks terrible, especially when she's spinning. She spins like this kind of old woman. Oh, it's bad.
Yeah, it's too bad, because every clip I seen, like, I was like, oh, it looks like effort went in, like the actual aesthetic, cinematography, all that looked good, but I could tell episode 1, the writing was about on par with Obi-Wan, so I knew I wasn't going to make a video, so I gave up on it pretty quick.
Yeah, I was actually planning on making a video of Ahsoka, but I think Echo's video about Ahsoka says it all. I just couldn't do it, man. I was just so done with it.
Yeah.
So done with Star Wars.
Yeah, me too. Well,
I think that, it's one of those like middling things where it wasn't bad enough to just crap on it, but it's not good. Like the 4 episodes I saw, the first 2 episodes I would say were very average. They were pretty slow as far as the dialogue and stuff goes. Episode 3 was terrible. Episode 4 picked it up. I've been told episodes 5 and 6 are great. People like those a lot. And then 7 and 8 are back to just sort of average. And the issue right now, especially with Star Wars, is they really can't, on the heels of Mando 3 and Obi-Wan and Book of Fett, they can't afford average. Like, they really needed this to get blown out of the park, because I think their next property is the Acolyte, which doesn't have a date, but that's to my understanding, that's the only thing that's actually in production that's going to come out next. Have you guys heard about this show?
I've heard of it. Yeah, go ahead, Echo.
That's going to bomb terribly. Leslie Headland has gone on record in many instances about how her identity as a lesbian is something that she feels blithely and quite happily that she wants to infuse into the characterization and the story writing. Why wouldn't she? There's her perspective on that.
Hold on, Echo. What you just said contradicts itself. You're telling me we're going to get a hot lesbian Star Wars show, and you're telling me it's not going to be a hit? Like, that'll be the #1 video on XTube and RedTube, or whatever they call those sites now. That'll be huge. That'll be bigger than WAP by what's her name.
But yeah, to go back to Ahsoka, if you took 12 still shots from that production and you hadn't seen the show and you looked at the still shots, it would be amazing. You'd think, wow, look at the cinematography, look at those landscapes, look at these cool looking characters. So the discrepancy and disconnect between that and actual reality is pretty sad. I think Kenobi is just still slightly ahead of this because for all the nonsense and claptrap, you still had Ewan McGregor, who at least has some genuine acting pedigree, and you'd like to see him on screen. So that was at least that. Whereas with Ahsoka, you can do the minimalist, stoic, kind of mystic character well, and make it compelling within that narrow range. So if you have someone like Liam Neeson in Batman Begins as that mystic figure, he's still interesting and compelling to look at, even though he's within a very narrow expressive range. So you can do it. But yeah, I don't know how you got through the 6th episode, Greg. That was one where I was looking at the screen and literally going to myself, just something happen, anything happen, and nothing happened.
Well, Disney is obsessed with like multiverses, and I didn't know this because I don't dislike Star Wars, but I'm also not like a Star Wars super fan. Like, I'm a nerdy person, so I genuinely follow it, but I'm not like in the nitty gritty of it. But I just found out that because of like the cliffhanger ending kind of thing, I guess people are talking about how there is a Mando verse that Dave Filoni is trying to get going. Like, he wants to be the Kevin Feige of the Star Wars Mando verse, the Star Wars cinematic universe or whatever. And I guess all of these shows are supposed to kind of tie in together, and there's supposed to be like a Mandoverse movie that apparently this is all supposed to be leading to. Do you guys have any details about this? Because I'm just hearing about it, and I didn't realize that this was all supposed to be leading somewhere like phase 1 of the MCU kind of situation.
I've been noticing that they're tying in. So, for example, it's almost ridiculous to say it, but Andor has characters that are shared with Ahsoka, and some of them also appear in Mando 3, I think. And so I see a character in Andor like Mon Mothma, and she shows up in Ahsoka, and it's like Andor's actually a really good, but it doesn't work because Andor is taking place in a completely different universe, a completely different feeling fictional universe. So in Andor, the main thing is that actions have consequences, and that I was talking about how the flow of time is secondary to the requirements of the script and to the dramatic beats in Ahsoka. Whereas in Andor, everything feels very natural. It's one of the reasons it's such a great show, because it feels natural and very well thought out. And things don't just happen conveniently. They happen when they happen, and the characters have to deal with it. Whereas in Ahsoka, things only happen once the characters are finished having a conversation about whatever boring shit they're talking about. So it's weird when you see characters show up in both universes. It's very jarring. It would be like watching a character from season 3 of Game of Thrones walk into Ahsoka, and you're like, wait, what are you doing here? This is a shit show. You're not supposed to be here. But then, I mean, if it was that character community of season 8 of Game of Thrones, you would understand. But
you're right. Like in
it's odd. It's just odd.
In the Mandalorian, it's a different vibe and a different aesthetic. It's like cowboy kind of a villain of the week kind of feel to it. Whereas if you have something like Andor, it's more supposed to be gritty and a wider, more expansive drama. And so if you're right, you cross-pollinate characters between all these shows, it looks weird, and it's janky in terms of the vibe and feel across the different shows.
Yeah, they need to pick a lane. Are they going do you want to go with the episodic villain of the week, like you said, or do you want to do the more grounded and more adult? I'd say adult, but I mean, Jesus Christ, I've seen like 30-year-old men cry watching Ahsoka online. The more mature, the more fictionally mature and more satisfying stuff that you get in Andor, do you want to go with that sort of more grounded, gritty, mature, or do you just want to keep doing the kiddie shit, the stuff like Ahsoka, basically, you know, kiddie, memories, nonsense? Yeah, so they really didn't need to pick lane. I think Star Wars needs to go with a single aesthetic in terms of its emotional feel and its visual and the world building. But they're not. They're going to continue basically throwing everything they can at the wall and seeing what sticks, which seems to be their strategy.
Yeah, well, Jeff in the chat just said that I guess they canceled the Mando movie, which honestly I think that's a good call because everything Star Wars, you know, for the last couple of years has been on Disney Plus, and they keep making this mistake where they have these shows and you're expected to really essentially do homework. Like you're expected to keep up with these shows. You need to watch Mandalorian, you know, seasons 1, 2, and 3 to understand the tie-ins to wherever else they're going to put Mandalorians. If they made the movie, you would need the background of those seasons. A lot of the Ahsoka, you didn't need, I mean, I didn't watch Rebels or Clone Wars, so you didn't need to watch those shows to understand Ahsoka, but you would have needed to watch this Ahsoka show. What I'm told through my comments is that Sabine was kind of a side character in Rebels, sort of introduced toward the end, didn't get a lot of depth. So this show was deepening her character. So any movie they made would be with this new version of Sabine that you would need to have watched the show to understand. And so when you have reports of, you know, 1.5 to 2 million people at most watching these shows on Disney Plus, and then they put it out to theaters, there is no chance that they're going to see the numbers needed to actually make that a successful movie because the audience isn't going to, I'm not going to show up to a theater when I know that I haven't seen 5, 6 seasons of television that I need to inform what's going on screen.
Yeah, I do wonder, no one's, because we've all been so preoccupied talking about, for example, superhero fatigue, no one has really brought up the issue of like multiverse fatigue, or sorry, not multiverse, like just franchise fatigue, this notion that you have to, cinematic universe fatigue. Are people sick of going to see a movie or watching a show that basically requires them to do homework beforehand, or which requires them to have seen a bunch of other stuff? Because if you look at the 3 most popular movies of the year, Oppenheimer, Barbie, Mario, they're movies that you can just go watch and they start, they finish, they're done, you go home. It doesn't have any required watching, and it's not part of a broader cinematic universe. So I am beginning to wonder if that model, that cinematic universe model, is beginning to feel a bit dated and people are getting sick of it.
Yeah.
I think even those movies just being the top 3 of the year shows that people are starting to get sick of it. Like it's a huge reason I haven't been tuning into the recent Star Wars stuff or the Marvel stuff, which I know we'll probably talk about later. But like it's crazy to think as someone who's grown up with it, or like I was 8 years old and they released Iron Man and I couldn't care less about the MCU shows that they're doing now. You know, even though I was obsessed with it ever since being a kid, like it's become homework over enjoyment. And I think,
yeah,
like my most recent video is kind of just like, dissecting about how Oppenheimer being the success it was and the other movies that have outperformed like big franchises, like even though Mission Impossible was good, it's just like some of these movies getting outperformed and the big franchises. I think it shows that the having to connect and pollinate into each other's universe, I think, is starting to become fatigued for people for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I recently rewatched the Captain America trilogy. When I was rewatching, I just watched them like straight through. And when I was watching the third one, I was like, wow, when did that happen? Like, because I'd forgotten all the early Marvel movies. And so there were characters showing up on the events that were being talked about, and I had no idea what the hell anyone was talking about. And I think people are kind of sick of that. They're sick of going to a movie and it's like, wait, what? What happened? What's he talking? Who's she? Where'd she come from? It's nicer to just go to a movie and know exactly what's going on the whole time, as if you pay attention. It's like, hold on, no, I showed up, I paid the money, I'm paying attention, and I still don't know what's going on. That's not fair, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think like the MCU used to do a really good job of actually you could go into individual movies without seeing the other ones, and you'd still be with it for the most part. Like you would miss the odd wink at a thing, but now it's gotten like, even for people like us that are in the space every day, like there's just so much that we feel even left out at times. Like it's gotten overwhelming at times.
Yeah,
I would make a distinction between because it can be good if you're plunged into the middle of something, and you film where you don't know what's going on and you have to figure your way out. Like in 1977, people who went to see Star Wars, they had no idea what the Clone Wars were that Obi-Wan was talking about. They had no idea, like, who is this Darth Vader guy and why is this princess talking about these diplomatic missions and things? You don't know what's going on. But there's a beautiful balance because you're also being swept up in this kinetic, fast-paced action adventure. And there's also these other things that you can sort of expand the world in your imagination without needing to have all this like encyclopedic intricate knowledge of all this other stuff to make it make sense, which slows it down. So I would make a distinction between those sort of categories. I also did a bit of digging into Dave Filoni, and I looked up his wife, and his wife on her profile has the pronouns she, her, they, them. And Dave Filoni says, I really credit her with opening my eyes to all sorts of feminist views and ideas I hadn't thought about. So I think in the Filoni household, I think there's two people working on these scripts. It's my little conspiracy theory.
It definitely might be. Jeff, thank you so much for the donation. And I think Jeff is right there. They don't really keep track of the plots. There are, I think we talked about last time how ever since the Eternals, in the MCU, there's been a giant celestial hand thing sticking out of the planet, and they just kind of pretended like we just forgot about that. We're not going to pay attention to that anymore. But speaking of the MCU, next month we got the Marvels coming out, and I think that's going to fall into the same category where, like you said, we're dealing with characters, especially Monica Rambeau. She was in a movie, like she briefly was in Captain Marvel. And it's the same thing, like Despot was just saying, where, Captain Marvel came out 4 years ago. So people are going to have to remember this side character that was in that movie, or they're going to have to have watched WandaVision all the way through to the end, because Monica doesn't really develop her powers, and she doesn't really have a whole lot going on in that show. She's a side character until like the last 2 episodes, and then she gets the powers and everything. And then also you would have need to have seen all of Ms. Marvel to understand her powers. So news has come out recently about the Marvels. It's coming out next month. And I think there's a few things going for it. I do think it's going to lose money. But one of the big things is that the budget came out. A big budget was revealed that right now it's costing $275 million to produce. And that does not include marketing. So just assuming that they don't market this at all, they still need $550 million in gross ticket sales to just break even. And then, marketing goes above that. And then also there was news that came out that the runtime of the Marvels is going to be about, I think 125 minutes or no, that's not right. An hour and 25 minutes, I think is what I saw.
I think, yeah, around an hour and 45 is what I saw. The shortest MCU movie yet, anyways, is what I was looking at.
So I'm interested to see what you guys think about that, because on the one hand, I think the shorter is going to hurt the movie, because you're not going to have time. Like Wakanda Forever took its time to, okay, Chad, this is how, T'Challa is dead, and this is how Shuri is the new Black Panther. And like they had time to introduce all those characters. The Marvels is not going to be able to do that. But then if I'm playing devil's advocate with myself, I'm thinking maybe the shorter runtime will make it feel a little snappier, and the movie might actually benefit from that. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think they want to make it zany and fun, and they want to make it twisty with all the different character arcs intersecting and splitting apart. And you do that in a quick, snappy 1.5 hours or whatever. That could be a good strategy. Maybe they're aware of the concept that there is a bit of fatigue of films being too long and bloated and grandiose, and they want to try and make it kinetic like that. So why not? So yeah, the $100 million they spent on CGI, and they're trimming out tons and tons of it. So well done on that investment.
I know there were reports a couple months ago that it is going to be like I think they said it's going to be like like they want it to be a silly kind of zany comedy. I think that's the tone that they are going for.
And of course, Brie Larson is known for her lighthearted, zany, brilliant comedic chops. So that's going to be a surefire.
The other thing I think might be going for this movie, and like, because originally I thought, okay, it's cost $275 million. this is going to lose. It's going to make the Flash look like, oops, a 20 fell in my pocket kind of thing. Like, it's going to lose all the money. However, I think the shorter runtime might help it a little bit. Like, I think people aren't going to call it boring. And I think the other thing that's going to help, like, it's still going to lose money, but it won't lose as much as before, because now Dune 2 is not, I think it was going to be the week after, or maybe it was going to compete week of, but that's been pushed back now. So I'm looking at movies for that week, and the week it comes out, November 10th, there's a horror movie, It's a Wonderful Knife, Your Lucky Day, The Holdovers, which is Paul Giamatti, but I don't know what he's, supposed to be doing, and Journey to Bethlehem, and The Great Turkey Town Miracle. So I don't see there being a lot of competition that week, and so it might have an okay opening weekend.
I mean, that was the problem. I would say that's probably the main reason that Mission Impossible flopped this year, because despite being a really good movie, it was just really badly scheduled. And look, I know you say that in retrospect, they didn't know at the time that Barbie and Oppenheimer were going to do such insane numbers, and even Sound of Freedom beat it domestically, and that was supposed to be a nothing movie. So it ran into really bad competition. So it does matter the movies you're up against. For example, if they had released Mission Impossible, say, a month later, it would have made a lot more money. Just got a really bad luck running into those massive movies. So with no competition, it is going to do better. It has gotten a little bit of luck there. And like you said, people aren't going to call it boring. I can't see any word of mouth for it, though. Like, if you say, well, people won't call it boring, that's not exactly word of mouth. I mean, Barbie was massive on word of mouth. That was one of the reasons it got so big, because women were talking about how much they loved it. But this thing, I can't imagine people are going to be walking out of the cinema and recommending it to their friends and relatives. It just looks like such a bland, and it's a superhero movie as well. Superhero movies have had a terrible year. I know people say that Guardians 3 did well. Guardians 3 isn't even a superhero movie. It's a sci-fi adventure movie. Yeah, it's a Marvel movie, but really, is it a superhero movie? No, none of them are superheroes. It's a sci-fi adventure kind of comedy. So people still like those, but this is a flat-out superhero movie, and it's got Brie Larson in it, and it's got 2 other characters, actresses that no one knows about, has heard of, and all of its trailers have been ratioed, and there's been no marketing. Probably a good thing, actually, seeing as Brie Larson would have to front that. But I don't know, man. I can't. Apart from the fact that there's no competition, I don't see much for it. And even though there's no competition, a lot of people like to go to the movies around Halloween. Mm-hmm. So they might. It would going to see a movie the week after Halloween is almost like your friend calling you up when you're hungover as hell on Sunday morning, saying, "Oh, you want to go out tonight, man?" And you've got a splitting headache, and you're just like, "No, I'm done for at least a week." So I'm not convinced that it's going to do particularly well. I can't think of a single good reason, in fact, that it would do well.
Especially considering all the recent MCU entries, like Guardians aside, has been a huge tail off for the franchises. Like the most recent Thor, huge drop off. Ant-Man, third Ant-Man, huge drop off. And this one's relying on a mixed bag, which was Captain Marvel from 4 years ago, and a couple like obscure characters from the Disney Plus shows, and they're kind of relying on people that were attached to those to go out and see it. So I don't foresee any good positive word of mouth, but I think that's going to be a huge asterisk for the success of this one.
I can definitely envisage outlets like Slate and the Daily Beast with pieces saying, "This is such a refreshing romp, and it's a lovely breath of fresh air."
Oh, absolutely.
I can definitely see that. It's going to be weird rhythmically because it'll be, zany and kinetic and rushing from thing to thing, but there's also going to have to be fairly large info dumps just so the audience knows what the hell is going on, and that's going to stagger the rhythm.
Yeah. Sorry, good. Yeah.
What was the other point I had? I think those are my only 2 real concerns about it, I think.
When you said
the other thing was sorry, I just remembered. Will there be one clanger line that costs $50 million? One line about the patriarchy, one line about, which everyone talks about and refers to. Will there be a clanger line? Or will there be like this tectonic grinding between the writers desperately want to say this line versus it'll cost $50 million? Will they go with it?
Yeah, I remember seeing the trailer for The Woman King, which flopped quite badly. And one of the lines was, the Europeans have come to conquer us. and it was very much, evil Europeans versus, noble, savage Africans, which wasn't even true. Like, that wasn't even what the movie was about, but that's what the trailer made it look like. And because I suppose they wanted to start a race war to promote it. And that was a disaster for them. It was such a stupid marketing tool. And then Bros, which was a massive bomb last year, its trailer finished with that line. And that line was, "Oh my God, do you remember straight people? Huh, yeah, they used to be a thing." And oh man, I love those lines that just tank the movie.
Yeah, well, the new Exorcist film has a line where Ellen Burstyn goes into a room and confronts, is talking and saying, I wasn't allowed in the room in the original film because the patriarchy wouldn't let me in the room. Talking about, so, oh God, amazing. The hubris to put in a line like that.
Yeah.
Next month, I'm sorry, when next month is going to be dry next month. You got the Marvels. The following week, you've got the Hunger Games. I'm very interested to see how the Hunger Games does if millennials like myself, think back to the days when we would read teenage young adult dystopian novels and just want to relive that in the Hunger Games for a minute, and I'm interested to see if Rachel Zegler pulls that movie down, because she's so obnoxious. She's trying to fight Brie Larson for who can be the most insufferable person in Hollywood. And she wasn't really a known quality when Shazam came out last February or January or whatever it was. So she didn't really affect that movie too much, but now she's all over the place. And I'm very interested to see how that movie goes. And then other than that, there's Trolls, which I have a serious, I hate Trolls. I hate all those movies. I don't get it. I don't understand why people watch them. My kids don't even, I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be a real dry November.
Well, it usually is. I think that between the big, I don't know if there's going to be any big December movie blockbusters this year because of the writer's strike and the actor strike. Everything was moved forward because they couldn't promote it. But the second biggest blockbuster season of the year, you've got summer, which is big, and then I think that maybe the biggest of the year used to be summer. Now it's basically the holiday season. So you've got Christmas and New Year's. That's a really, really big time for cinemas at the end of the year, start of the new year. Also, it's really cold in a lot of places, so outdoor entertainments aren't as popular. And November's usually quite dry, so yeah, it doesn't surprise me that there's really nothing going on there. It's interesting though, Echo, you talked about how you thought the Marvels would be helped by being zany and funny and this comedy, this light-footed comedy. I mean, they tried that with Blue Beetle, and Blue Beetle absolutely bombed.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, Shazam kind of goes for that aesthetic a little bit too, to a certain extent. But I mean, it's just been a down year in general for most comic book films.
Who is the target audience for the Marvels? If you go into a cinema, who are you going to see?
I think you're going to see
people with nothing better to do that day.
Old pensioners and young women. Is that the target audience?
I genuinely think that from about 14 to 24 women, I think that's what they're going. Like, yeah, I mean, it feels the articles that I've seen and the you guys have seen the trailer. It feels, it's not quite like a High School Musical level teeny bopper type thing, but it is. I think they are going for I don't want to say child. Like, I'm not trying to be insulted. Yeah, it is. They're trying to really. They're going for a more lighthearted, almost stupid, silly, with the cat eating people. And at the end of the one trailer, they cut to Brie Larson and Tiana Paris, and she's doing I can't. You got to handle, like, they're trying to go for this silly comedy thing, and I don't think that's going to play for anybody certainly over. I don't think anybody over 25 or 30 is going to really go for that. I don't really think anybody over 22 is going to go for that.
I'd be very interested to see the chemistry. Sorry, go ahead, Echo.
I have sometimes this whimsical thought that Brie Larson is an Academy Award winner, and her performance in Room was very good. I just wish that if she hadn't put on a superhero costume ever, and she'd just gone out and stayed on the trajectory she was on, did quality roles, gritty roles, good dramas with good characterization, she would be in such a better place in her life. She wouldn't be miserable. She wouldn't be talking about 40-year-old white dudes. She would be respected and liked. So the whole thing, I don't know. That's just
she was in the recent Fast and the Furious movie, right? She was in Fast X, is that correct?
She shows up on a bridge wearing a blue suit, carrying a submachine gun, and she fires at some bad guys for a while, and then I can't remember what happens to her. Fast 10 is one of the worst things I've seen this year. It is astoundingly bad, but she was good in it.
Yeah, she seemed to tone down her snarkiness, and she generally seemed to be a pretty positive vibe about her coming out of that film. So I don't know.
I mean, she is a good actress. And I mean, I know that people say, oh, you know, Rachel Zegler's taken the crown of most insufferable from Brie Larson, but it's not even close. Like, Brie Larson made some stupid, idiotic comments because she thought that she could win social justice points. She thought that she could increase her credit score by saying things that, you know, the regime wanted to hear. And it didn't work out for her because she's a moron. But that wee girl, Zegler, she's just, she's something else, man. She's something else.
I don't know. Brie Larson still has that.
She's another breed of creature entirely.
Yeah, Brie Larson still has that vibe of the girl who enters the school cafeteria and it just becomes an oppressive vibe for everyone. That's the sort of vibe that she gives off.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is we're gonna start to see more of them. I mentioned this the other day that I know everybody on YouTube. We're all excited that these people are going to be interviewing again, so that we can make fun of them. It's just free views. You know, somebody's got to make the videos. We might as well. But we're going to see more of them because the writer strike is over, and I don't know how you guys are feeling about that. Have you seen any details about the contract that they arrived at? And do you guys have any thoughts about, like, you know, who won? Did the writers win? Did they wait it out? Did the studios get ahead of them? Like, what are your feelings about going forward in Hollywood with the writer strike? And what do you think is going to happen for the actors, because their thing isn't wrapped up yet?
Well, I went through all the criteria, and I think the writers broadly got everything that they generally wanted, especially around AI. There's good rules and regulations there about they can't be usurped by that going forward. And that's good. I want those guidelines there. And residuals is interesting because residuals are going to be pegged not just to a flat fee, but to how a show performs. And so that's going to be interesting because that's going to make writers conceivably make more money based off merit. So they're going to up their game because they want, through merit and connection with audiences, to get the bigger residuals. So I think that's cool. That's a good leveling principle. So generally, I think the whole thing worked out pretty well. I think it was a good balance that was struck.
The AI thing was quite interesting to me, and I think in any case, studios can't really use AI the way people are worried. So, for example, if a studio were to use an AI-generated script, and then it was proven, if somebody proved that this script was generated by an AI, and then somebody edited it a little bit to make it a bit more coherent, the script becomes public domain. That is not copyrightable. So basically, the characters in the movie itself, the actual movie itself, probably wouldn't become public. That would still be licensed to, let's say, Universal, but that would still be licensed to Universal. But the characters from the script would definitely be public domain, and the merchandise, as a result, would essentially be public domain. So anybody could make an Ahsoka T-shirt or something. So AI, as much as studios will definitely make use of it, they'll only make use of it to generate, very, very basic template ideas and things like that. And then writers will take it going forward. And that's not just a creative thing. It's a legal thing because AI is not copyrightable. So there's absolutely no financial incentive to use it, and shouldn't be copyrightable because, I have opinions on AI. I don't think it's really AI. I've looked at quite a few articles and videos about so-called artificial intelligence. It's not artificial intelligence. It's an amalgamator. It's just an amalgamator. So, for example, if you said, okay, ChatGPT, look at this video from Greg Owen's channel, this live stream, and give me an image of a live streamer, it would just amalgamate our four heads. So you would get a vaguely Irish, British, I don't know where you're from, Greg, but or Rekrap, but like an Irish, British kind of Western European face with a little bit of facial hair, basically.
Nice. I'll take the facial hair.
It's just amalgamating stuff, and that's all it really does. I just think of AI as an amalgamator. I don't think it's anything very impressive, and I think the whole fuss that's been kicked up about it is nonsense, to be perfectly honest. It's just an advanced search engine, in my opinion.
Yeah,
right. It sounded like the biggest blockade. Oh, sorry, Greg. Was just that the was just the residuals based off how successful the streaming show was. Hey, and from what I was reading today too, it sounds like for the Actors Guild, they got basically the same opportunity given, but they were looking for more requirements there. I haven't looked into too much, but they got basically the same deals laid out, and then their talks came to a halt. Hey, so
there's something.
Do the actors get residuals? Did the actors get residuals?
It looked like that was what they were looking for, but it was interesting to see. It said on like shows that were successful enough, like that there was almost going to be a line of measurement.
Right. I do like the fact that it has to be successful, so it's not just you'll get residuals no matter what. It's if the show makes money, you will get a little bit of that.
Yeah, exactly.
But obviously, I would have preferred it to go the other way. If the show loses money, we're going to take the money back that we paid you. That would have been great. I would have loved that.
Do you think
I'm a capitalist swine, so I'm all about the free market. If you want a piece of the pie, then you have to invest in. You got to invest in the dough in the oven.
Do you think it might make content even more risk averse? There's potential for that because people might think that, well, in order to make the residual money, I have to be lowest common denominator. I have to go for the broadest possible audience. That instinct might kick in.
It'll balance out. I think that'll kick in for some writers, for the lesser writers, and that's a good thing because the show will fail, and those writers will end up having to go work in a supermarket, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with working in a supermarket. I think that's great. You shouldn't be writing She-Hulk. You should be working in a drive-thru or a supermarket. You'll be much more beneficial to society in that role than making She-Hulk.
Well, maybe if they had like a contractual system where this is a type of show which is going to have a niche or smaller or select audience. So we're going to pay you more at the front end and then slightly less in residuals to mark how we project it's going to perform. Whereas if it's a broad-based show, we'll give you less at the front end, but your residuals will be larger because you're likely going to make your money through its success commercially. There could be models like that.
Those models already exist. Famously, Sylvester Stallone took a tiny amount of money for Rocky 1 in order to maintain a large cut of the movie's profits. Another one would be Arnold Schwarzenegger with Twins. He took a small salary for that, and then he got like 20 or 15%, something crazy. And that made him gigantic amount of money because it was a smash. So that's always been available at the high end. I don't know up to the extent to which it'll be available to writers. And in any case, most writers couldn't do that. So most Hollywood writers, they're not doing great financially. And I don't think they could afford to take a small salary for larger residuals in 90+% of cases, I would guess.
Alec Guinness got 2.5% of the back end of Star Wars. Imagine how
That's
much
crazy.
Yeah.
I wonder if his family does his estate still control that, or did they sell that? Do you know?
Don't know. It's a shit ton of money. That's for sure.
Yeah.
This guy Tai Fung brought up an idea that I was kind of excited about, because at first I thought if they get residuals, then we will get more information about like the viewership numbers, because these streamers are very tight-lipped about this stuff, and even the Samba TV and the Nielsen numbers, like it's not as accurate. It's all private information, and I think this guy's absolutely right that it's going to be private. The writer's contract said that the studios will provide the numbers privately to the WGA, but they have 20,000 members. That information is going to get out, and we'll get a more accurate picture of how these shows are actually doing. The other thing that I'm a little interested to see how it goes is one of the writers' provisions was guaranteed minimum number of writers in the room, certain number of writers, certain number of writer producers, which apparently that's a whole different category. And so they got guarantees, and that's all based on the number of episodes. So from 1 to 6 episodes, there's this many writers, and then from like 8 to 12, there's a larger number, and so on. And a couple of years ago in America, we had our president Obama. We had this whole healthcare overhaul, and it basically said at if you have somebody working 40 hours or more, 35 hours or more, then they're guaranteed health insurance, right? That was a whole big thing that we had like a decade ago. And so what you saw were a lot of companies that were like, okay, cool, 35 is the minimum. You're working 34 hours, 34 and a half hours is what we're scheduling. Like we're going to get right up to that limit. And then that way we can cut our costs. So I'm interested to see if we're going to see more 6-episode, especially like the first season, where Netflix is very infamous for, we'll make a season or two, we'll throw it to the wall, we'll see what sticks. And I'm interested to see if they keep their new shows to 6 episodes so that they can meet that smaller minimum room requirement for the writers. And then if it takes off, great, we'll make more episodes next season, but we can save ourselves a little investment with this guaranteed number.
Yeah, good questions.
Echo, you've got some experience in journalism, I think. So I think that you would be the man to answer this. What are your thoughts on minimum requirements for writers? Do you think that that's conducive to creativity and to producing quality scripts and quality content?
You mean like from a freelance type of perspective?
I don't know if you've worked in office and around other writers who are trying to work together, but just in your experience, do you think that forcing more people into the room to having a set minimum is how is that going to affect the writing process?
I think writers generally tend to be quite territorial, isolated, strange little nocturnal creatures who don't like being around other people in the best of times, let alone when it comes to writing itself. I think it's kind of like a forced or contrived situation. Obviously, there's great shows like The Wire or The Sopranos where you have guys who are mates who hang around together and know each other's vibe and can bounce off each other well. But if you just take 6 guys or 6 people who don't especially know each other well, maybe have different agendas, and then you try and mash them together in front of a whiteboard, you're going to come up with a camel, which is a horse designed by committee. What would you rather trust, if you had to, between a streaming service's viewing numbers officially or Chinese Communist Party GDP data? Which would you trust more?
That's a good question. It's a good question. I mean, if the honest answer obviously is I'll take the streaming numbers. The Chinese Communist Party is another conversation, but I get your point. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely. I don't trust. Like Amazon lied about Rings of Power infamously.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would guess that Disney are probably lying about the Ahsoka debut. I do lose track of the amount of lies. The big one was Rings of Power from Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have an interesting ability to sort of to check. Like if you take a franchise like Star Wars and their official numbers up to now, and then with these new rules, they have the official numbers that get leaked. It'd be interesting to see if there's huge discrepancies between, then and now. That'd be interesting to watch with relatively similar product and content shows.
Well, I know I was watching Dan Murrell talk about this stuff. He went into
I love that guy
explanation, and I think he said that the agreement was that I think 20% of subscribers have to tune into a show for those residual numbers to kick in. So I don't know if I think it's cool that they're going to get paid for residuals, but I think that floor is very, very high, especially as time goes on. And every year you see these charts of, there used to be 40 new shows a year. And, now we're up to 500-600 shows a year that get produced, and the audience just doesn't have time. I don't think that, I know Dan did a chart of various shows that he pulled up numbers for that, he could find. And there were a handful that got over this, I think it was 15 or 20 million viewers on Netflix that would need to have watched it, and there were several that he found, but it's few and far between. And I think that's a very high hurdle that these shows are going to have to get over for these writers to see that it sounds cool, but I don't think that it's going to be the land of milk and honey that they're thinking that it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. I've been following Dan Murrell since Screen Junkies, and he's kind of like this North Star for me. Whenever I feel that I'm lurching too far off the track and getting a bit silly, he's kind of like this this touchstone of being sensible and decent and looking at things in a sensible, decent kind of way. So I always tune into him, and I think he should have tons more subs, but he's just not controversial enough or provocative enough. So he's going to stay at that number for a long time.
Yeah, that's well, I mean, we all know that's hard. That's a hard temptation to fight against. You know, you wanna shout and scream because you get the subs, but I don't know, I can't do it full time. But I love how educational. I mean, he just presents the information so well. I love watching his stuff. So do you guys think that the Directors Guild or whatever union they signed in June, the Writers Guild is taken care of? I think a day or two ago they officially voted on that. I know Parker said that the actors got some offers and they turned those down. Now that those other two are done, do you see the actors coming back to the table because they're kind of standing alone and everybody else is going to go back to work and they're kind of hanging out in the breeze? Like, do you see that wrapping up soon?
Yeah, I think there will be momentum that way. The other one was the what's it called? It's like the guild for all the people sort of behind the scenes who do all the practical stuff. Don't they have their own separate guild? Like the grips and the runners and all those people and production staff on set. I don't know, but yeah, probably momentum. They'll just probably want to get the thing done. It seems the momentum's going that way.
I honestly, I think that the studio's caved. I think that, like you said, they got a lot. The writers got a lot of what they wanted, especially when the actors joined them on strike. Because I mean, this summer was a disaster, and partly people are blaming the fact that they didn't have any actors to promote anything. Now, I'm not sure how much stock I put in that, because I don't know that I've ever seen an interview with an actor talking about their movie and then just thought that was the decider. Like, yes, I'm going to go see that movie now because whoever said the movie that I'm starring in is a great movie. Like, I don't understand how people think that's a big deciding factor, but maybe that's just me. Like, I just don't pay attention to those interviews, but they claim that it was a big deal and they couldn't get any PR with these actors, and that tanked a lot of the movies.
Well, July, but I was going to say July is I think it was the second best July ever for the box office. So the summer did have a lot of early disasters like Indy 5 and The Flash, which were just massive bombs. But basically Barbie and Oppenheimer saved it. That saved the summer for the theaters because those movies did incredibly well and ended up making way over 2 billion between them. So yeah, I mean, the early summer was bad, but July was a tremendously successful month.
Yeah.
If you look at those interviews online, they tend to have incredibly tiny amounts of numbers with those interviews with the film stars. But I do think it filters through in terrestrial television when they have like review clips about what's coming up, and they're pretty speedy and they're just a couple of sound bites. I just think that filters through.
It's good for international numbers as well. So, for example, a lot of the promotion, people think the promotion is, they'll tend to think it's not a big deal because they're thinking in terms of the domestic market. But let's say, for example, you have Timothée Chalamet or Zendaya showing up to a movie premiere in South Korea or China or Japan. That's a big deal. You know, that in that area, the media will report it and it will bring numbers in for those markets. Europe as well. So a lot of the time it's just when you see photos of Zendaya in some stunning dress at a movie premiere in Berlin, the reason she's wearing that is to get it's clickbait. Like, her dress is clickbait. You know, that's supposed to go into the domestic German press and get people to click on it so that they discover that she's starring in June 2 and they go to see June 2. Why they wear those ostentatious, attention-grabbing dresses. So that's a big part of that promotion is international.
Yeah. So I know we talked about earlier, we had mentioned One Piece. I know, Despot, you said you finished it. I finished it. I loved it. Echo, Parker, did you guys watch One Piece live action on Netflix?
I have not seen One Piece, the live action anyways, but I hear that I have to.
It's the best show of the year.
I'm definitely going to check it out.
It's not even close.
Yeah, Echo, did you get a chance to see it?
Yeah, the first episode was almost as perfect as the first episode of Squid Game in terms of getting everything you need, setting up this world, giving you this cool sense of fun, getting you hooked. And it was great. It was just a blast. It was silly, stupid, kooky, fun. But it really trailed away for me into just, then it became, within a couple of episodes, really kind of episodic. Here's today's episode set in this place with these characters that you haven't met, then that's going to resolve. Then we're at this mansion where there's this girl who's sick and being poisoned by the staff, and then that's the little set piece for that episode. So it slipped into that groove very quickly and very starkly for me. But I loved the first 2 or 3 episodes. And I thought it was just fascinating to watch because you've got something which is very, Japanese originally.
I think it's all based on a manga that started in '97. I think I looked up.
Yeah. So culturally, it's essentially Japanese, but so much of its tropes, from cowboys to pirates to all these other things, comes from filtered through an understanding of Western tropes brought into it. And then that whole product is brought over to Netflix, where you have modern day diversity and other stuff put into it. So you put that layer into it. So I just felt like I was watching everything, every type of trope, every type of thing, all just mashed into one thing on the screen. Superheroes, cowboys, pirates, Japanese cartoons. I was just watching an everything show, and it was fun. I liked it.
I like the episodic nature of it. Like you mentioned, you didn't really like that about it, Echo, but I mean, for me, it was unit in 2 episode arcs, and you can think of them as almost villain arcs. So the first villain is the clown, and then you've got the guy with the knives, and then later on you've got Arlong, and he's over several episodes. And I really like the more episodic nature of it because that's something that I think it's broadly missing from modern major series. You compare that to something like Mando season 3 or Ahsoka, and like a great comparison is One Piece and Ahsoka, because everything that One Piece does right, Ahsoka does wrong. And one of them is because Ahsoka, it's not episodic. It's occurring. It's not even occurring over one season. It's occurring it's trying to occur over at least 2 seasons when you look at the ending. And as a result, a lot of it is very slow. A lot of it is filler. A lot of it is Ahsoka practicing her lightsaber moves for 2 minutes and then sitting down to think about it for a minute, and then someone comes into the room and she talks to her for 3 minutes and you have no idea what they're talking about, and 2 minutes later you can't remember their conversation. A lot of it is just filler. But with One Piece, you do get the sense, I will say this, you get the sense that they are burning through a huge amount of manga material, because the actual cartoon, the anime, there's over 1,000 episodes. They have a giant amount of material to burn through, and you can tell they're burning through it. For example, just those little 2 episode arcs in the anime form, that's like an entire season. So they're burning through vast quantities of this stuff to get their 2 episodes. I think that's why it feels so entertaining, because there's so much going on. They've just taken the best bits from these seasons of anime. And I like the episodic nature of it because it's something that it's become so rare that it's actually refreshing to see. It was the standard in the 1990s. And then I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Lost. Do you remember that TV show Lost?
Mm-hmm.
Parker, did you ever see that? That would have been before your time, judging by that smooth baby face.
I get that a lot, but I actually have seen Lost.
Yeah, well, what did you think of it, seeing as you were coming to it after the fact?
I was coming to it after the fact. I like Lost for what it is. The more I got into it, I think it's flawed. I enjoy Lost for what it is, though. Or did you you grow up on it? Did you enjoy it?
I mean, I didn't grow up on it. I was exactly the right age for when it came out. So I think, in my mid-teens when it came out, or like 13, 14. And it was the biggest show in the world. And Lost was the show. Twin Peaks as well. Maybe it was Twin Peaks in the 90s. That was the first show, I think, that it didn't bother with episodic. It just had an entire season happening, and the story was happening across that season. So sometimes people today, they'll look at Twin Peaks and they sort of think, well, it's a good show, but what was the big deal? What they don't understand is, at the time, it was a massive deal because it wasn't episodic. It was one big story.
Right.
And I like that it's back to episodic, because we haven't really had that since the 90s with One Piece. And One Piece isn't even episodic. It's 2 episode arcs usually, or 3 episode for the last 3.
Speaking of the clown, I could not stand that clown character. It's like,
I can understand that. Yeah,
Jim Carrey, except with no charm. It was excruciating to watch. But the interplay between the main characters was so sweet and so innocent and so affecting. the main guy, just with this goofy, irrepressible self-confidence. It's a simmering kind of joke in and of itself, which is beautiful and lovely to watch. And the stoic, quiet fighter character, there's almost like a slight deadpan in there as well with his interactions. So I just had fun because it's complete nonsense. Like it's a crazy load of bollocks with like people in an old-fashioned pirate hatch with neon signs in the background. It's so its overwhelming appeal is innocence.
Yeah, it's brilliantly. What's the word? When like a man out of time, where you've got all these technology that's anachronistic. It's beautifully anachronistic. So you've got technology that doesn't belong together all in the same time period, and that is it's almost like incoherent aesthetic is the aesthetic.
Yeah,
it's paradoxical. You know, the world building in terms of its technology and its setting and its visuals. It's completely incoherent, and that is the aesthetic. I love that. I love that they've just embraced the paradox of it.
It's that one time where postmodernism can work and be funny, and actually you can appreciate it. It's just a goofy postmodernism. That's what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't pretend to make any sense or have any deep meaning. It's just we're just doing this because it's really fun and dumb, and we think people will like it. Yeah. I saw your video on postmodernism, Greg, which I thought was really good. And I love that point you made about the girl in front of the bull statue.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's not pretending to have deep meaning. It's admitting that it's just crazy, you know?
Yeah. And I like it. I like the fact, I enjoyed the fact that it was so silly, and they just embraced it. And I think that's fine. Now, one thing that I'm so excited that I have you guys here. I don't know. I know Parker has said in his videos he's in Canada, so I'm not outing him. I don't know how private you guys will keep your lives. So if you don't want to say what country you live in, that's fine. But something that I am very interested in is, and we talk a lot about, like, this is woke, that's woke. We talk about this virtue signaling stuff, all that in Hollywood, and a lot of that is a very American concept because, Hollywood comes out of LA, it's in America. So all of that stuff it's real Western, it's very American. And something I'm interested in, I got this comment on my One Piece video, and somebody said that, like, in Eastern Asian cultures, virtue signaling is not nearly as much of a thing because it's like a collective culture. Yeah, they're very into collectivism and community, and virtue signaling is a very individualistic thing. It's a very look at me, look at how good I am. Like it's a very draw attention to yourself kind of concept. And that made a lot of sense when they explained it. It's a very long comment, so I won't read the whole thing, but that was kind of the spirit of what they were saying, is that it's a, virtue signaling, wokeism. They're very, very Western, specifically American things. And since you guys all live around the world, I'm interested in your specific region. What does this, like, social progressivism, or what we call wokeism, or whatever term, what does that look like in where you guys are at?
Well, for me here in Uzbekistan, obviously there's a lot of repression and people don't talk. No, in New Zealand, we're just starting to get it now, but it clashes in two ways because we're a very egalitarian society. And we're also, for us, identity politics is kind of like a downer. People don't really talk about it. No one would talk about abortion here or anything like that. It'd be kind of lame and strange to bring that sort of stuff up. But it is creeping in. And our particular version is to do with the indigenous people, the Maori. And when our country was settled, we had a treaty of Waitangi, which was signed with the indigenous people, which is endured as this flawed but also actually decent document that establishes the rules and conventions between the Crown and the Maori who signed up to this treaty. And there's been all sorts of reparations that have been paid to various tribes by using this as a system. But the problem now is that there's this idea that some people want to push of co-governance, where Maori would have specific types of access to local community services or to utilities, or their own separate but equal forms of governance at all sorts of levels. And people kind of push back against that because that goes against that egalitarian notions of one person, one vote, We're all equal, irrespective of everything. So that's where our interesting tensions are. And it's bubbling out because we've got an election in about 3 or 4 days. And you've got one populist, centrist guy who's getting a rejuvenation in the polls because a lot of that stuff is welling up for a lot of people. So that's our particular slant on identity politics. But when it comes to like diversity in casting, that's not really a problem. I think most of what we produce tends to have a lot of Polynesian and Maori content in it because we tend to find that more entertaining. So that's sort of where we're at.
But you, Parker, how are things in Canada? Man, I've been watching a lot of videos about Canada recently. It's so much worse than I thought.
Everybody says that when they watch some recent stuff or hear about their latest news. As far as that for my personal life, like it's something that I navigate pretty much every day because I'm in getting my education degree. So I doing practicums teaching, and it's something that you got to navigate carefully as far as that goes. As far as diversity hiring and stuff like that, I mean, we just gave you guys Robin Hood. So, I mean, I'll apologize for Canadians for that one. I guess that would probably tell you where it's at.
Apologies not accepted.
That's not accepted. In fact, Parker, I should warn you, I'm actually going to be invading Canada soon. I am in my next video, I will be formally declaring war against Canada in retaliation for Robin Hood because it was funded by the government. So I've no choice.
Well, let's make a pincer movement.
Well, now the only thing I know about Canada, of course, you know, Jordan Peterson is super famous in America, and his whole thing that he got famous was because there was like legislation they'd proposed to actually, I guess, criminalize or they wanted to amend the legal code to talk about like safe speech or, you know, that you had to use people's, you know, their name or their pronouns or whatever. Is that still a thing that Trudeau is pushing for, or like,
yeah,
what's the status on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's still a huge topic right now. They're trying to pass legislation in Saskatchewan. They're going through it. Like I'm in like super rural, middle of nowhere Ontario. Like it's tough running a movie channel because I'm about 2 hours to my nearest movie theater. Like we're just getting colored TVs, guys. So I'm surprised that my internet can keep up with you guys. But no, like we see it all the time. Like in Saskatchewan right now, they're passing it where it's, if you need a parent or guardian, if you're under 16 or 18 to be referred to which pronouns in school, if you can change them without a parent's consent. I mean, all that stuff it's going around here every single day. It's the main topic of news.
I'm not gonna, monologue about Canada, you're the Canadian here, but it really upsets me, that kind of nonsense, because it's such utter bollocks, right? Like, you can give yourself whatever pronouns you want. You can call yourself a woman, girl, an alien, an extraterrestrial. I don't care. You do what you want, but I shouldn't be forced to entertain your delusion, right? But here's what really annoys me about this. Canada does have problems, like really serious problems in terms of quality of life and cost of living. From these videos I was talking about, I'll give you some of the data. The cost of a house, basically in, I think, Toronto, it's and pretty much all over the country, compared to cost of living, it's 70% higher than New York. So the cost of property relative to cost of living is 70% higher in Canada than it is in New York. Like, these are not, no one can buy a house. Like, there are people who are earning a lot of money and they know that they will never, ever be able to afford a house. The cost of living is gigantic. So people are just broke. Everybody's always broke at the end of the month. And you're talking about fucking pronouns?
No,
do you ever get upset about that, Parker?
What's that?
Does that ever upset you? Is there a sense of that in Canada, that people feel like their priorities are all wrong?
Yeah, I mean, lots of people, they have the views that we just go on the picket line around and just apologize to each other. But there's been, I'm sure you guys heard about like the huge truckers thing that went on, and it's a frustrating thing that with all the problems, and like it was in our notes. I know we were going to talk about like the Galactic Cruiser kind of shutting down in our Star Wars thing, but because it was like $6,000 for a family to go on, and I was just I was laughing because that's a trip to the grocery store here in Canada right now. So it's crazy that the biggest problem is the pronouns in schools and putting litter boxes in the bathroom and public restrooms. It's a crazy thing.
What about very complicated? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just thinking, I have a very complicated relationship with Jordan Peterson. I think my least liked video was one where I tried to do an objective analysis of him. At the outset, he was absolutely right. Like, people can refer to themselves and contextualize themselves however they want. But his big complaint is that it was being made punitive if you didn't refer to people in terms of potential for fines, if you didn't refer to people by the terms that they wanted to be referred to. And that's crossing the line. He was absolutely right. And then I did this whole huge video about how there was this moment with Jordan Peterson for 2 or 3 years where he was right in the zeitgeist and people on both sides were finding him interesting and compelling. And just in the recent couple of years, he's, I think, in my view, he's still incredibly popular, but he squandered that space where he was considered relevant and interesting on both sides. And I think he squandered that a little bit by going over to more specifically to one. Like he was speaking at the Oxford Union. He was doing a monk debate with Stephen Fry was on his side of the debate. So there was just a moment where he was, this real catalyst. And it's just lost it a bit.
I saw that video and I think you did an excellent job on that one. And I agree with you that for me, the moment that I really, I can't say I like lost respect for him, but I kind of felt like it was a tipping point was there was like a Sports Illustrated cover. I think it was a transsexual woman or I think it was a body positive gal. And he tweeted just like, she's not pretty or something to that effect. And I just felt like he spent these years building up this college professor, very intellectual, cerebral guy. And then to tweet out a quick, value judgment about this woman's appearance, like that's so counter to the whole persona that you've built up. And it just shows that you're being dragged into this culture war bullshit that your whole brand is like being above that. You're pure logic. You're Mr. Mr. Make your bed and take care of yourself and all that shit. And that to me was a big point where I just felt like he's really being taken over by these people who just he's part of the culture war stuff. And
exactly.
It was disappointing to see that. And it's happening more and more with him.
I mean, body positivity is not hard to attack, but you need to focus your attack more on health grounds rather than beauty. I mean, I've talked about body positivity, and I'll be very blunt about how disgustingly ugly a lot of these models are. But at the same time, I don't really care how they look. What really upsets me is that they are pushing a tremendously unhealthy lifestyle, and that's the big problem. It's not so much the attack on beauty as it is just encouraging people to drop dead at the age of 50.
Yeah, you're right. He had the psychological control as a psychologist, but when he started tweeting and going on, it was very just like very primal, very reactive, very
very emotional.
History on it. Yeah. So that was a shame. But time and again, you get little flashes and flourishes of the old Maverick we used to love. But time and time again, people would come up, respond in comments and say, no, he's more popular than ever. He's selling this many books and he's got this many followers. Yes, but that's only more and more towards one side where it becomes inert in the wider public discourse.
Parker, I was going to ask you because, you're a young guy. Do most people your age still buy into all the woke nonsense, or do you feel that there is a general fatigue among younger people, or is it a male-female divide? How are things in Canada with regard to how people react to that your age?
Gosh, I would say it's still depends what kind of circles you find yourself in, right? More so than age. I don't know. A lot of people my age and younger, I find the pendulum, I would say, is swinging it's swinging back to a bit more like how it was. You're not instantly canceled if you refer to a group of people as like, hey guys, come here, you're not instantly done for and sent to prison. So I would say like in that sense, it's gotten like less severe than I would say it even was like a couple of years ago. But at the same time, like even just the amount of like it takes up every headline when there's, like you pointed out, like much larger issues that, like whenever I see someone's top complaint is some of this progressive and woke stuff, it's like you got to think, wow, you must have it pretty good, like if that's your biggest concern, because it's definitely a crazy thing. But I know like I can't speak for all of Canadians because I live in such a rural area where we definitely have like, you know what I mean? Views are subjective to like where you're located. And I know in my like my rural area is probably different than what you'd see somewhere in a Toronto or a Vancouver, right? For the most part. So in the main city centers. So but like from what I notice, a lot of like the streams I watch and stuff like that, it's definitely gotten less severe and people like actually enjoying hearing some opinions from the other side and the fight back. Kind of like what Jordan Peterson when it first started, all about the how you can't get fined for referring to someone wrong. I think like a lot of content on that side has gotten much more accepted by the mainstream, I would say. Like I think the pendulum has swung back quite a bit.
Despot, are you remaining incognito or what's the social?
No, I've never made it. I've never made
deal?
any secret. I've never made any secret of the fact that I live in South Korea. It's on my YouTube. Like if you go to the about section, it'll say South Korea.
That's what I thought, but I can't remember what we've talked about and what is public. I don't want to accidentally say something. But yeah. What's the culture like in South Korea? Like, is it virtue signal? Is it like this commenter says, like that Eastern like kind of group, don't draw attention to yourself kind of thing? Like, what's that looking like? Yeah,
it even reminded me of an expression they have over here. I remember an incident when I was with my ex-girlfriend in a cafe and we were getting a bit handsy, and I was getting a bit handsy, and then she said, "Nuni man na," and that means there are many eyes, and that's an expression over here. There are many eyes, and what that means is, watch your behavior, don't draw too much attention to yourself. There's a lot of people in the room who could be watching you, and that's not an expression in English. You wouldn't say that in English, like there are many eyes, and probably I would guess there's an equivalent in Japanese. And the idea behind that is you don't want to draw attention to yourself. And that's very much the culture over here. Even if you were to go out, you go out in the subway or you go for a night out in Itaewon or Hongdae or something, the big popular areas in Seoul. One thing I always noticed is that the girls tend to dress in some combination of black, gray, and white. They're dressing in a manner that's not, it's not conservative. Like you'll go out and you'll see some like incredibly beautiful women dressed in very provocative manner in some places, but it's it's sexually provocative. It's designed to elicit sexual desire in men. It's not so much look at me. It's more like I want a rich guy kind of look. But people do dress in a way that it's not designed to avert attention, but they're quite happy to kind of go with the herd and not to draw attention with themselves. And when you do see people who are dressed in much more ostentatious, colorful clothing or in a way that's likely to attract attention to them, it's usually Westerners. And another interesting thing, they have a gay pride. A pride parade. It's not just gay anymore. It's all the wonderful colors of the rainbow and many letters of the alphabet now. And they have that once a year here. And it's most of at least half of them are foreigners. It's foreign driven. And it's essentially attempted cultural colonization. So I remember having conversations back in the day when I used to go out before I was, married with a kid, and you'd have these foreigners and they'd be saying things, they'd be complaining about how gay people couldn't get married and how, there's not enough sex positivity and they're not open enough to gay people here. And it's like, you're a cultural colonist. You're trying to export your ideology into a different culture. But at the same time, you scream on Twitter about the evils of colonization. So terrible hypocrisy there. But yeah, very much here, the whole idea of virtue signaling and drawing attention to yourself isn't the thing. But fundamentally, I was thinking about this because I do see it a lot on YouTube comments. People say things like, well, what is woke? You can't even define woke. So I decided to come up with a definition for it. So I basically, in my case, I would define woke as a political ideology, movement, and neo-religion that is primarily concerned with intersectional identity, particularly focused on sexual, gender, and very particularly racial identity. And essentially, it's an attempt to impose a caste system, an intersectional caste system on the West. So that's and there's a lot more. There's a lot more going on with woke as well. One of the reasons it's so hard to define is because there's so many. It draws from so many ideologies. It has Marxism in there as well. But instead of class warfare, woke tends to go essentially for racial warfare. It encourages races to despise one another, and also men and women to despise one another. So it's a kind of a weird mix of Indian caste system, Marxism, and feminism. Basically, it's a very putrid mix of just basically the worst ideas that have occurred to humanity over the past several hundred years. Now, there are one thing I will say about South Korea is that there has been problems here with feminism. Feminism is tremendously unpopular among young men here, and even a lot of people blame feminism for the very low birth rate, which I think is unfair. I think that the birth rate here was caused largely by government programs encouraging people to have as few kids as possible. This went on for 30 years, really from the late 60s up to the early 2000s. And only then did the government begin to realize what an absolutely massive mistake they'd made and begin to reverse course. So if you're ever wondering why South Korea has the lowest birth rate in the world, it's basically because of 30 years of government-backed social engineering. And then they had a massive economic crisis, and property prices here are absurd. But they are gigantically high. They might even be higher than Canada. So all that together, you've got a very low birth rate. The reason I bring that up is because it's important to bear in mind that there are other ways to destroy a society apart from woke. So the very low birth rate over here is it's literally killing the country. And you don't see woke here. And then you look at advertisements. A huge one is advertisements, right? If I look at American or British advertisements, I see fat women jumping up and down with massive smiles on their face because it's just so much fun to be obese. I see, one thing I didn't realize after I left the West, something happened after I left. So I left, and what happened was all of those all-white friend groups that I used to know, they all just stopped. They don't exist anymore. Every single friend group everywhere now, and every single family is multiracial, is mixed race, according to British and American advertisements, right? Every single one of them. It doesn't matter if it's where it is in the country, there's always mixed race, and that's not the reality. Most friend groups are just uniracial, or maybe it's a bunch of white guys and one girl from East Asia or something like that. But it's just absurd. I actually have a word for it. I call it ethno-distortionism.
Ethno-distortionism.
I'm thinking about doing an analysis of ethno-distortionist propaganda, because that's what it is. The goal is to distort people's understanding of their own demographics. And they don't have any of that here. So if you look at advertisements, it's a pretty young girl, and she's advertising tuna, and she smiles, and then she eats some tuna, and she goes to indicate how much she liked it. And then there is a wide shot to let you know that she has attractive breasts, and then the advertisement ends. That's what it's like here. But in the West, it's two men kissing for a while, and then they go to a gay pride parade, and one of them proposes to the other one, and then they hug, and then they advertise the tuna. You know what I mean?
Well, there's ethno-distortionism. I would say that the version that is here is that in advertising, it used to be the default would be, because it's the majority, would be like a white couple or a white family. That would be the generic default. And then over time, I think in the last 5 years, advertisers have made the decision that the generic default will be like a minority or an ethnicity family. They've made that the default that you see in advertising, with the effect that it's quite distorting, because now the vast majority of advertising features not the majority in the advertising. So there is that kind of distortion because that default has changed.
Yeah, well, I mean, the idea is to get the populace to, there's a element of nefariousness to it, but it's also just that every single marketing firm on their own wants to have diversity in everything. So it's the fact that the marketing firms are filled up with these people who think this is also wonderful. And it's not this overarching conspiracy. It's just a bunch of little idiots all over everywhere. And it's not like they're working in concert. It's just, that's what you get when every single marketing firm, and marketing firms, I think, are 60% women plus, sometimes more. And when you get young women coming straight through the college to corporate pipeline, having been brainwashed with left-wing ideology in universities, they're all going to be making similar looking ads with a similar kind of, every ad must be racially mixed. It's a prerogative that they have been taught their whole life. So that's the result. It's not like a bunch of guys in a room twirling their mustaches and thinking, how do we destroy the country? But the result.
I made a video
Go
about
ahead,
this
go
where
ahead.
I talked about the idea between the idea of the patriarchy. I made this idea of hard power and soft power. So the idea there's the patriarchy where the white men are at the top and they have all the power. And in many ways, that's still true in terms of hierarchies. But in terms of cultural messaging and power, how our culture is actually reflected back to itself in terms of marketing, companies, television marketing, public relations and communications, overwhelmingly with women in charge, controlling that, designing and creating that messaging into the culture. So in that scope, how we actually receive messaging in society, those old terms of how power is decided in society are just kind of redundant now, because you've got those two things happening at the same time, and people aren't able to pass that. And it's also very interesting when you go from looking at your advertising on the videos that you watch maybe online, and then every now and again you'll dip into terrestrial television, you'll watch the news, and then you'll see the conventional ads, and the sudden shift in terms of, it's worse than America, where the men are all these like clumsy, dunderhead, chubby Doritos eating morons who are like pushed around by their subdued and sophisticated wives and women. It's just the same tropes and nonsense.
That was
Worse
our
than it's ever
sitcoms
been.
for a long time too. That was oh
Yeah.
God, we spent over a decade doing that.
Now, how's it on Canadian advertisements, Parker? Do you get that same ethno-distortionist picture? I know Canada is increasingly a very diverse country, but is it the case where like it does not matter whether it's an advertisement or TV show, you will never see a group of you'll never see a group of 5 white people and they're just hanging out?
No, you nailed it on the head. It's the exact same case. It is completely mixed race every single time. Adopted kids. Half of the time it'll be a commercial for a razor and the person has to have a prosthetic. There's been I don't know if anyone else on Canadian networking has noticed, but every single ad lately, somebody's got a prosthetic on. And obviously because I'm Canadian, I'm trying to watch the hockey games, and these are all the ads we get.
Yeah.
I feel that we're all collectively guilty when it comes to Canada. I feel like we're the parents, and America has always been this loud, difficult problem child. And so we assumed that Canada was okay. But actually Canada's the quiet one who's actually been doing all this dark shit while we haven't been paying attention. So
we're just
feel guilty
on the world stage. Yeah.
It's like Canada was this lovely little, 12-year-old girl, and now she's 15 and she comes out of her room covered in scars, and she's got her hair dyed dark purple, and she's in massive
she's
Dr.
vegan.
Martens.
Yeah, she's vegan as well.
It's not a phase. So the woke thing, I was interested to ask you guys about that, because I saw a lot of I saw it back and forth. I saw certain YouTubers that we were talking about One Piece, and I saw certain YouTubers that were like, it's super woke, partly because I think the Kopi actress is a trans person, and then also there's such a big line with Arlong being a former slave. The fishmen are former slaves, and they reference that, and so a lot of people called the show woke. I don't agree that it is. So I'm kind of interested to see what you guys think. First of all, did you think the show had like woke stuff as we understand it in America? Because it is it's based on Japanese stuff. And Echo, I know you said it's kind of like a blending of Japanese culture with American Netflix producers. And then my other question, I want to know what you guys think is, do you think that because it was very successful, do you think that it's going to have a positive impact on like adaptations or live actions going forward, or do you think this is like a one-time thing? This is the success that we're going to get. Everything else is Cowboy Bebop from here on out. Well,
I think if you've got in order for something to be woke, there's got to be an element of co-opting or distorting. Like if you have original subject matter which is esteemed and loved and has a maturity to it and a very specific in-universe that people cherish, and then you take it and you co-opt it and you just put in all your messaging and you make it silly, or you dumb it down, or you make the content secondary to your agenda, then that's woke. But if you take something which is already goofy and silly and carnivalesque, then who cares? It's fine.
It's not woke, in a word. And I know what you're getting at with the Arlong thing. I actually thought I didn't know, because I thought, wow, that's really out there for a live action anime show to be doing this. But I thought that they were parodying reparations, because there's a point where Arlong, the fishman, he is talking to a corrupt marine who he's bribing, and he's given this Marine a large bribe. And then he goes into a rant. He says, humans enslaved fishmen. You think we're all stupid. You still think we're inferior. And the Marine's like, oh, no, I don't. No, I don't. I think your people are wonderful. I never said that. I think that we should get along fine and we're all equal. And Arlong keeps at him and keeps ripping into him. And you can tell that the guy's kind of just wilting away. And I thought that was a parody of white guilt. And then the guy just gives Arlong some money back to shut him up, to stop him, guilt tripping him about slavery of fish people. And then Arlong sort of smiles and nods his head, once he gets his money back. And I thought, okay, that has to be a parody of basically race hustling, where a race hustler comes along and makes lots of noise and gets angry and encourages other people to get angry and will eventually shut up for 5 minutes once somebody pays him a check, basically. So I thought that was a parody of that. So if anything, I thought it was anti-woke, but I didn't think about it too much because I was just too busy enjoying the show. And I think that's where you want to be. You don't want to be a TV show should not be an exercise in cerebral effort. You do just want to be enjoying it. Echo did a great review of a movie called Power. And one of the phrases I really liked that you came up with was, this is a movie to be admired rather than enjoyed. Yeah. And I really know what you mean by that, because I enjoyed it because I studied music in uni and I really enjoy classical music. I listened to a lot of that. And so I very much was familiar with that world that she was in and a lot of the things that go on there. And I really enjoyed the kind of the examination of false manners and almost the satire of false manners that goes on in that world. That was very familiar to me. But for the vast majority of viewers, 90% of people are just going to be bored out of their minds watching that. So you really hit the nail on the head when you said it's to be admired rather than enjoyed.
I think also with One Piece, the creator, like the actual author, he's got a lot of sway about the decision-making, casting, direction of it. And that's probably like a good element in this as well. I like that when you give the original creator that impetus and that power to overrule any potential flakiness or people inserting their own ideas.
Yeah. And yeah, like you said, because the guy Ito's in charge, season 2 should be pretty good as well. And they know, Netflix as well know, they know why Cowboy Bebop failed. They're not, they're kind of idiots. They made Cleopatra. Well, they let Will Smith's wife make it. But they know they're not complete morons. They know that people hate woke stuff. They know that why Cowboy Bebop failed, and they know why One Piece succeeded. So they're probably just going to be quite happy to remain hands off and let Ito do his thing for season 2 and collect the check after. So I don't have any fear for season 2. I think it's going to be fine, and it's definitely not woke, not at all, not a chance. There's nothing about it. In fact, there's one scene where a girl says she's been sword fighting with Zoro, and they're both teenagers because there's a lot of flashbacks. So they're little teenagers this time. They look like they're around 13, 14. And she says, I can beat you now because I'm better than you, but in a few years, you'll be bigger and faster than me, and you'll have longer arms than me because you're a man and I'm a girl. And maybe a girl can beat a boy, but no woman can ever beat a man. And that is anti-Hollywood. No Hollywood movie would ever say that. For example, One Piece, this is the one thing I will give Netflix credit for. They do allow good stuff to get made. One Piece could never have been made at Disney. Like, could you imagine Disney allowing a line like that in a show? No woman can ever beat a man. That is verbatim the line. Disney would burn the script if they saw that. That would never get made somewhere. Like Disney are incapable of making compelling TV shows or movies now, whereas Netflix still can. So no, it's definitely not woke. That's a crazy argument. I think that's people who have become so like they have become hypersensitive to woke, and now they're way too sensitive. So they see a black woman. Whoa, my God, it's woke. They see a guy with purple hair. It must be woke. They see a racially diverse cast. Oh, it must be woke. They don't really understand what woke is. Part of the intersectional caste system that woke seeks to impose is that within a caste system, there are certain roles that are prescribed. So if you're a Dalit in India, there are certain you have activities that there are a limited number of activities you can participate in professionally, and a lot of activities you just can't do. They're forbidden to you. It's not just a case of you're regarded as lower. There are prescribed activities. So, for example, if you look at Ahsoka, you know, the opening scene, you've got this dumb white guy, and he's very egotistical, and he's braggadocious, and he ends up getting killed. That's a prescribed role because he's a Dalit in that caste system. Yeah, a black woman would not have been able to do that because that's not her role. Someone of a lower caste is required to perform that role. So that's how the intersectional caste system manifests in something like Ahsoka. But if you don't see that prescribed role, you know, given to the characters in a show, then it's not woke. It's racially diverse, but it's not woke unless you have, you know, white men looking like idiots and black women are basically goddesses, things like that.
You know, I think that the caste system portion of it, that's a really good way to classify it too, because, and I think the fact that you see people calling it, like some of it, I think you're right. Some people are just on the lookout for it. Like they're going to call everything diverse. They're going to call it woke. But I also think that it speaks a little bit to how kind of beaten down and sensitive to it a lot of people in America are, because almost everything fits that definition. Like I use She-Hulk as my go-to example all the time because it's just, I mean, it fits the bill so perfectly. The men were idiots. They were dumb. That was their job. That's a great way to put it. That was their job, was to be stupid or to be callous and not listen to Jen. You know, they were bad in one sense or another. They were stupid or they were bad. And I think that in America, we have a big, I mean, slavery is a big part of the culture, or not part of the culture, but it's a big scar on American memory. You know, slavery was a big deal. It was an ugly, ugly time. And I mean, the country kind of grew up with it. The founding of the country had slavery baked in, and it was going to be another 100 years before it was totally eradicated. And then it was going to be another, 80 years before black people got the right to vote here. So it's a whole big thing in American culture. And I think that a lot of people watched the show, and Arlong was like, we were slaves. And I think a lot of American people were just like, oh, they're attacking us. They're trying to bring up slavery. And again, I think it's, they are used to it. Like, I think that kind of race baiting happens a lot in the movies and the shows that come out of Hollywood. But I agree with you. I don't think that it was used in that way in the show. Like, I think historically, slavery is that makes sense for it to be part of any character's backstory, because at any place in the world, at any period in history, there was likely some form of slavery. Especially if you go back a couple hundred years, the abolition of slavery historically is a very, very new idea. So if you're making any kind of historical work, or you're making a fantasy world and you have some form of slavery in it, obviously you don't want to celebrate it, but I don't think that you should pretend like it never happened either. And I agree with you. I didn't see any like weird woke stuff. Like you said, none of the people fit their normal roles. You didn't have, Nami wasn't the smartest, strongest, most amazing, while the boys were just idiots and they were, they couldn't tie their own shoes. And I was extremely happy with how it turned out and how they handled a lot of the subject matter. Like, I thought it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. The budget was 137 million, which works out at about 17 million per episode, and it seemed a lot to me at the time, and I couldn't make up my mind if it was the budget. You could see the budget or not. Like, some of the time there's these spectacular visuals and great landscapes and everything, and other times, sorry, Rekrap, would look like something out of Canadian TV, and it would just kind of go between these things. So I couldn't quite see where the budget went.
Well, the budget for She-Hulk was 25 million an episode, so...
Wow, really? Fuck.
Yeah. So, that's for 17 million, that's pretty good.
Jeez. God damn.
Yeah, it's hard to quantify just how bad and how much of a failure She-Hulk was.
Man. God damn.
So
episode.
we are... I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't know how many. I know Despot said he saw it. I don't know if Parker or Echo, if you guys have seen The Creator. I have not seen it. It's getting lots of good reviews. However, there's a little bit of a, where do I got to pull it up here? The Creator. Okay, like, so far it came out on the 27th of September, so 2 weekends ago, almost 3, and it is currently made $64 million worldwide. And I know I know even if you haven't seen it, I know Parker's going to want to weigh in on this because he talks a lot in his videos about like the mid-range movies and stuff. I'm I'm afraid that as good as this movie is being received, it's going to cement in studio minds that mid-range movie because it costs 80 or 85 million to make. So it needs like $200 million to turn a profit. And I'm afraid that it's going to cement in studio minds that, yep, we were right to never take a chance on mid-budget movies. Everything needs to be a $200 million blockbuster. It needs to have all the CGI, and it needs to have a script that will appeal to 95% of the country. Have you guys seen it? Echo, Parker, have you guys seen The Creator? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it came out with a huge amount of buzz. Greeted it very positively when it came out, but then it just kind of faded real quick. And I think everyone can see it and kind of get the gist that this is more an amalgam of tropes and stuff we've seen before than it is actually genuine original content. So I think that's an element in it. Yeah, I think a lot of people are just going to say, well, I think I know what this film is going to be. I think I know what trajectory it's going to go on. I think it's going to hit this beat and this beat and this beat. And so there's, I don't know, not especially any motivation or incentive to go watch it. And if you're saying like the budget isn't high enough to get the kind of spectacular, super wow visuals that might also lure you to the cinema, then what is the reason to go see it?
Yeah, I like I say, 2 hours to my nearest theater, so I've not seen it, but I don't know, it's definitely my most anticipated movie to watch right now. I'm really looking forward to that one. I hope the studios don't take the wrong lessons for it. Like Echo was saying, I think there was a lot of things going against it for how much it was going to succeed, which is unfortunate because I'm a huge Gareth Edwards fan. I think it looked good. The word of mouth was hugely positive, but that has also just skydived away. Like I've not seen anything about it since. The conversation did not stay alive. But I think like those mid-budget things, like audiences are getting so accustomed to being able to see stuff like that just right at home. It looked like, as far as marketing goes, like I can't speak to how accurate it is in representing the film, but I agree with Echo. Like it looked like an amalgamation of a lot of things that have been put out this year already and that audiences have seen. But I heard it's really great. Despot, you've seen it. Tell me it's good.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's good. It is good. I would say it's a good movie. It's not great because it does have problems. I would say it's got a lot of heart. You know, there's a really nice, emotional beating heart at the center of the movie, but the world building is, I would say, very shallow. It's very visual focused, the world building, and for example, the geopolitics frankly make no sense. You no matter how you think about it, you can't get them to make sense. And there's no attempt made to explain the geopolitics of the world, which is a good decision, because any attempt made to explain it would have just tied the movie in knots and created loopholes, because you can't really explain what's going on here. It just doesn't really make sense. There's elements of the movie that you would like to be explained, but really aren't. Like, so for example, there are AI robots which worship, they are religious. So there's Buddhist robots, AIs, and you look at that and you think that's very interesting. So why is AI worshiping? I'm not that familiar with Buddhism. They believe in reincarnation and eventual nirvana, but why are they worshiping ideas of divinity? And it's just never brought up. It's not explained. There's nothing there. And some people, I felt, when I was looking at the reviews online, a lot of people thought that it was anti-American because the Americans are portrayed quite negatively in it. I didn't get that, though. I felt that it wasn't so much anti-American as it was anti-military industrial complex. So there's this giant weapon. I'll spoil as little of it as I can. I'm not going to spoil any of it. There's this giant weapon.
That's anti-American then, right there. That's all we are. That's all we do.
And to me, the weapon is not a metaphor for America. It's a metaphor for the military-industrial complex. It's a pretty obvious metaphor. The movie is kind of hammy at times, but the acting is really good. The little girl in it, there's a little girl in it. She's terrific. Denzel Washington's son is good. I think it's Denzel Washington's son, is it? The main guy?
I believe so, yeah.
He's pretty good, and his wife in it, she's really good. I thought it was a very enjoyable film. And I don't think that the world building was really the goal. I don't think the director was trying to set up this great world, because he said he doesn't want any sequels. I think he just wanted to create an interesting world that was visually appealing, and to have this kind of love-driven story happening in that world. So I thought it was a lovely movie. Not great, as I say. It does have problems, but very well paced. The action is beautiful. The action scenes are so great to look at. And sometimes he does, drop certain things do come into the movie and you're like, oh, come on, man, how did that get there? But, and there are some conveniences, but fundamentally, like I said, I don't think he's going for really intricate sci-fi world building. I think it's more just, he wants to create a beautiful story happening in that world. And I thought it was really nice. I really enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite cinema experiences this year.
Mm-hmm.
You twisted
definitely
my arm
appreciate it, man. You'll enjoy it.
Watch it.
You'll enjoy it. It's a very enjoyable movie.
And as far as like the mid-budget thing goes, like on an $80 million budget, I heard it was like a lot of on-location shooting. Like looks a lot better than a lot of these $300 million projects.
Oh yeah,
It looks
yeah,
more
a
artificial.
lot better.
So
Yeah,
I hope
looks
that
real. Looks great.
Mm-hmm. That was my favorite aspect of seeing it, and that, or like seeing some of the marketing for it, and some of the reviews I read was they were just like praising the on-location shoot and how it looks like a $250 million production.
Yeah,
Which
he
I
does
guess
daytime
it doesn't look
battle
like
scenes
Canadian
too.
television. Yeah.
Daytime battle scenes is another one, because Hollywood they like to use a lot of shadow and smoke and nighttime to cover up their crappy CGI. But he does, the director is actually having these big, it's like he did in Rogue One, these big daytime battles, and they look terrific.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like think Battle of Hoth from Empire Strikes Back. That's the classic example of a full, well-lit daytime battle happening, and everybody loved that. And he really understands how to make that look great on screen.
You're right. As a cost-cutting measure, like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was just stuck in the Stygian
Right.
gloom for almost 3 hours. Horrible.
That was gross.
And they like to do motion blur that hides a lot of it. Also, that's a big tactic in video games. They turn the motion blur up, and then you won't be able to notice how bad things look because you can't focus on anything. So you're good to go.
You guys are really coming for my Canadian television.
The wait, no, I said games. The thing that worries me is that it's not doing well at the box office. The word of mouth is great and everything, but what concerns me is that the streaming model is kind of like, I think everybody is sort of like, it looks great and I'll catch it in 3 months on whatever Amazon, whatever service happens to have it. I'll throw $15 at it. My whole family will watch it. I'm really worried that we, the consumer, are kind of participating in this death of the mid-budget movie, because for the $18 a ticket that I'm going to pay for an evening show, even if it was just me and my wife, it's like $50, $60 to go see a movie. And for that, just to spend time with her, like, it's fine. Like, that's a nice evening out. We have a good time. I love popcorn. Like, that's a fine night. But I think a lot of people feel like that's sort of a waste of time when a movie is just okay, and they're already paying for a streaming service anyway, and they just figure, well, I'll wait, it'll come out. And then you see these poor box office returns, and then the studios feel like, okay, well, this proves it. We don't want to invest in these things. We're only going to invest in the indie moonshots, thinking that if one of them pops off, we've paid for 10 of them that fail, or we're going to only invest in universes where all 17 movies that we have planned are tied together, and the audience has to watch every one of them, and they're all massive spectacles they're a huge viewing experience, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think
or Disney live action remakes that cost $300 million.
Insane.
Yeah, I think another major factor that goes into that is, like you kind of touched on it there, is just the shortened theatrical window. It's killing it big time. Especially, I've noticed, like, when a film isn't super successful at the box office, like it's on a streaming service or for like buy on video on demand within like a few weeks, a month. Like it's nothing like it used to be. So the thought of waiting for a movie to just come to streaming or video on demand is way more enticing when you compare it to the prices and how much it is to go for a night out.
I also want to bring up the idea of I don't really like the film experience anymore. I'm so used to having a screen 1.5 feet away from me, or at most like 2 meters away from me on a larger screen, that I don't like the spatial relation anymore of a huge film screen, which is 10 or 20 meters away from me. I don't like that dynamic anymore. And if I'm watching Oppenheimer, I don't like the sound. That's like being in a threshing machine. It's like the soundtrack to one of those Hieronymus Bosch Visions of Hell. And I don't like people behind me or in front of me. The only time that Oppenheimer was actually quiet for 20 seconds was when the bomb went off. And the guy behind me went, "Oh, shit."
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? Though? Like, I don't like that spatial relation anymore of the screen being 25 meters away.
Sure.
I've never thought about it.
The something that I would like studios to sort of take a positive, like I don't know, on the one hand, I like the fact, as a consumer, I like the fact that the stuff comes to streaming right away. It's great, it's convenient. I can sit on my couch. We can pause whenever somebody's, if I have to go to the bathroom or a kid says something or there is some stupid noise, or you can just rewind, whatever. Like nobody's going to ruin that for you. And if they do, you can rewind it. There's a lot of conveniences. I think that Elemental kind of had an interesting arc, though, that started off really slow. I still don't think that it made money. I think that it's, they had a big marketing campaign, and I think they're still going to be in the red on that. But they stayed in theaters for a very long time, and they continued to just slowly but surely build that money up, and they ended up at like 450 million or something. The movie cost 200 million to make or something like that. So like I said, I still don't think they're ever going to turn a profit on it, but they stayed in theaters for a very long time, and it just came to streaming like 3 weeks ago. And I think that helped it make more money in theater, because once it goes to streaming, it's done. I mean, Disney can claim that they paid themselves $100 million or whatever, but like that's me taking a 20 out of my right pocket and putting it in my left pocket and saying I made money. Like that's stupid accounting. So they can say that, but once it leaves the theaters nowadays, like that's it. It's made all the money that's going to make. And it'll be interesting to see if studios kind of take a lesson from that. And like with this creator movie, like, okay, maybe it's not doing amazing, but if we can have one or two theaters across, one or two rooms in theaters across the country, we'll still continue to get that little residual, and it eventually will turn that profit rather than just giving up and going straight to streaming and cutting it and taking the loss.
I find the Elemental comeback quite fascinating because, I mean, my understanding is that it did very well internationally. I saw it and it really just bored me to death. I did not like Elemental and thought it was a pretty crap movie. So I'd never heard any word of mouth about it. In fact, I only saw like on the whole, the whole YouTube film space, which I'm plugged into, I only saw like one review of it. Nobody was talking about it. So I don't know where the word of mouth came from or why it was able to make that comeback. There's the term for it is sleeper hit, but it's extraordinarily rare. Like sleeper hits are crazy rare. So the idea that you're going to get 2 sleeper hits in 1 year is just mathematically almost impossible. I just don't see it happening for the creator, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is too bad. I agree with you. I took my kids. I thought it was horribly boring. I mean, it was just, I knew what was going to happen from the trailers. Nothing exciting was going on. Like, I don't know. It wasn't great, but
it had Disney's first non-binary character and Pixar.
That was inspiring.
How you could tell who that was, I have no idea. But hey, they got to claim it, so congratulations, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, you can be a non-binary flaming torch, so I guess that's progress.
Well, I mean, at least 20 years from now, or at least 50 years from now, you'll be able to turn around to your grandkids and say, I was in the theater to see the first non-binary Pixar character in a movie.
That's right. The memory I'll cherish forever. Well, listen, guys, I think that wraps that up, and I don't want to start a new topic that's going to take us over time. So I really, really appreciate everybody in the chat hanging out. Giving good feedback, and I appreciate you guys, Rekrap, Despot, Echo, for joining me on the channel. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to come along with me. and we'll do it again. And I'll see. I'll see you next time. That's my tagline. Good night, everybody.
Thanks very much for having me on, man. Bye-bye.
Man, thanks so much for having me on. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.